to the regular session of Findlay City Council on May 16th, 2023. We will start this evening's meeting with roll call, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Mr. Ballman?
Here.
Ms. Frischi?
Here.
Mr. Greeno?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer? Here. Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Slough?
Here.
Ms. Warnicki?
Here.
And Mr. Wobser?
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will entertain a motion to approve the previous minutes of City Council. Mr. Slough.
I would move to approve the minutes as circulated.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They are accepted. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, sir. We have an add-on letter from Mayor Mern concerning the Phase 2 benching properties environmental. We'll add that to the reports of municipal officers and municipal departments, and that was made in the form of a motion.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. That item is added. We have no proclamations, retirement recognitions, or resolutions. We do have two petitions.
A zoning amendment request for 0 West McPherson Avenue from Andrew Yates of Attic LLC to change the zoning of from O1 offices and institutions to M2 multifamily high density.
This item will be referred to City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee.
A zoning amendment request for 219 Hurd Avenue from Timothy Sigworth of Greater Findlay Properties LLC to change the zoning to R3 small lot residential. It's currently I1 light industrial.
This will be referred to City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee. Oral communications, we have two tonight. I don't see Deborah Peterson. No? Oh, you are here? Do you still want to speak? Well, yes. Okay. You filed one and, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see you come in. You understand you have 4 minutes. All right. And Deborah, when you get to the mic, there's a little red button you need to push that, and if it lights up, it's on. And introduce yourself and your address, and then we'll start the 4 minutes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Deborah Peterson. I live at 513 Cherry Street here in Findlay. I'm kind of tall. Deborah Peterson, 513 Cherry Street in Findlay. I'm speaking about a matter that concerns me very much, and that... Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to speak up. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll start all over.
Always a problem for me. Okay, my name is Deborah Peterson. There, I hear me. 513 Cherry Street in Findlay. And I would like to address the council about a matter that is extremely important to me. And it's about the June Pride Month. I realize this is a huge topic. I notice in the paper, someone has written a letter, Larry Richards, that expresses some of my views on this too. So that might be something you want to look at. And I do have a copy of that letter here. I looked on Congress.gov's website, and I saw that a resolution recognizing June 21st, June 2021 as LBG, whatever, TQ Pride Month was introduced by Senate Sherrod Brown on 6/8/2021. This resolution was introduced and passed in the Senate only. House.gov tells us that resolutions are not laws. Rather, they are expressions of the sentiments of either the House or the Senate. And as far as I understand, this was passed with full approval in the Senate only. That was when the Democrat Party also was in control of the Senate. So my appeal to City Council is to actually revisit this decision of having June Pride Month in Findlay so that many people, not just a few who approve of this, will have a voice in it. I'm concerned about the event at the park. I understand that our parks, fairgrounds, and other public venues are to be safe and family-friendly locales. I feel that the images and conversations, often lewd, that transpire at the so-called Pride event are not safe and family-friendly. I believe many share my opinion. Some people are being coerced into legitimizing homosexuality partly because of this community exposure and acceptance, and this is blatantly wrong, in my opinion. The main street, which is painted yearly with a false rainbow, has never washed off. I contacted the street department, and they said all groups are required to use a certain type of paint that will wash off after a short time, and they have not been able to take care of it for fear of harming the street surface. I question this. I would also like to say that I think fear is an issue in all of this, and it's time for some of our city leaders to stand up to the dominion of a few. So-called June Pride Month speaks for itself and is a moral issue only. It's not religious, political, freedom of speech, equality, or anything else. It's a celebration, in my opinion, of immorality. People have the freedom to choose their lifestyle, but not flaunt it before others or tyrannize them with it, as is happening nationally and now perhaps locally. Please consider my thoughts and let us have our city and park back in June and the rest of the year.
Are there any questions or?
Do I have another minute?
You've got 34 seconds.
Oh, great. Okay, I liked what this person, Larry Richards, wrote in his letter. Let's see here. Oh, dear. Let's see. Oh, first, the goal of the homosexual movement was tolerance. Tolerance morphed into acceptance and then became a cause for celebration. Now there's criticism towards those who don't embrace the celebration. Each step became a little louder in an attempt to gain influence, and left unchecked has now progressed to the point of attempting to normalize story time for children conducted by drag queens in drag paraphernalia. So you see how this has progressed into what it is today in the news.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Second, we're going to have Ben Ruzick. He's here on behalf of MetroNet. He's going to give us an update on their construction in the city. Again, 4 minutes. We've already talked about that. So.
Yep. I have the same thing of being too quiet, so I'll try to speak loud here. If you can't hear me, yell at me. First, thank you guys for allowing us to come up and just talk a little bit, give you an update of where MetroNet's at during our construction. It has been since January since I was here last. So again, I'm Ben Ruzick. I'm the Government Affairs Director for MetroNet. And with me is Chris Bauer, who is our project director and is heading up the construction project going on. And he is here to help answer any questions we might have afterwards. So on the first page, if you guys look at the handout that I provided you, it talks a little bit again about who we are. The main thing I wanted to talk about on this was I wasn't sure I covered this last time, and that is the fact that MetroNet is fully subsidized. So we do not require or use any government funding, whether that's federal, state, local. All the money that we're using to build out Findlay with our infrastructure comes from MetroNet and its private investors. So just want to make sure we're really clear on that and answer any questions that come up there. I've had a few of those here lately in other cities, and just a good time to talk through that. So if we jump to the second page, this is really what I want to talk about today is start moving into our construction. On this map, Chris was great enough to color code things for us. In the yellow, you'll see what's currently under construction. So it gives you an idea where we are in town right now. The blue section is where Chris will be heading to next with his crews. And once we get done with that, the purple is the ideal area that we'd move to going forward. Obviously, there is a ton that can adjust Chris and his movement, whether it's pull applications or permits and working through different things. Maybe it's something going on in the city and he'll have to readjust. But ideally, this is exactly what we're looking at right now. If we move to the second page, the great thing about the work that Chris is doing is he's building in geographic regions, which allows us to open up service to those regions as soon as he's done. So those first 3 yellow ones, those are estimated to release sometime in the summer of this year. Once he is done with those and has begun construction in the blue area, those will release sometime in fall is the ideal right now. The great thing about that is once those all release, things change and it's less about what is going on and when will this start happening in my neighborhood. So that's when we start getting the fun stuff and residents start getting excited about what we're doing. So I thought this was neat in the current year-to-date completion. In just the short amount of time that Chris and team's been working, underground, they've completed just over 222,000 feet of conduit that they've placed in town, which is pretty awesome. In the placed fiber, that 45,000, that's the fiber actually blown through into those conduit tubes. So obviously that's always going to trail behind the conduit that they're getting placed in the ground. The next page, just an update here in our communication process. Recently, Lee and I have had some conversations. Chris has had some conversations with the team. It sounds like a few more residents have reached out to the city asking for support. What is going on? We're stepping up what we're doing. So on the top side, it shows the letter, the postcard, and then the yard darts that we do. But we're actually going to start talking also, I believe, with Kathy and seeing if we can't provide some additional information that can get put online to help guide residents to our website. Once they get to our website, they can get tickets put in. If they call us, that's fine too, and we can get tickets put in. And then Kristen's team goal is to get 24 hours response time to every one of the tickets that get created to make sure they at least get answered. From there, we have 7 days to restore or answer or do whatever we need to do to support those residents. And so we use construction communication meetings to kind of talk through with the team and go through all of those. That actually, the next meeting's tomorrow. So we'll go through a quarter basically worth of work and look at the tickets that have come through, what have they been, what are they looking for, how are we responding, how are we doing in our job, and then also to look at have we had any damages, meaning utility strikes, things like that. We'll cover those and any adjustments that we need to make to make sure we're taking good care of the city. So I've rolled through that pretty quick so I could get done in my time. Do you guys have, I really...
That's your 4 minutes unless council would like them to continue. Ms. Frishy?
I was going to ask a question if you're done.
Yeah.
That's exactly
So
what
is that in
We're
the
gonna
form of
comment.
motion to extend their time as needed?
No,
Okay.
because they're done with their 4 minutes.
Would
That's
anybody
not
like
fair.
to motion to extend their time as needed? Mr. Baumann? Second, Mr. Wobser. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay? You can continue. Thank you.
Okay, I can continue. I think is what you meant, but
All right,
it's all
good.
good. So I will tell you, I've had communication from people. They have been happy with the communication out in the field when there's a concern about where you're going on their property, front or back, and hitting something and sharing their extra things underground. But there's also been concern about when you're not there, that there is a communication barrier. And so that has brought concern up. We've had some emails and stuff on that. I don't know if you can address something as far as your workers and that communication barrier and why.
Well, we do require, sorry,
Please, yeah, go to the
we
mic.
do require a English-speaking foreman to break down that barrier. So there won't be a group out there, not to say if there's 20 fellows out there working, you know, the foreman could be over here and a resident trying to talk to somebody over here. So we do try to address it. We do have our OSP supervisors floating around multiple times a day. So again, the footprints, the tickets that, you know, that you can call in, that's the best way to get our attention to them. So
Okay, that's
In
what they
those,
needed.
in those crews, there's one English-speaking supervisor
per crew.
per crew.
Per crew.
And then they have those OSPs are our team, the actual direct Metronet teams that go around and supervise the work that's being completed. It's just another form of check and balance. So hopefully we're getting there, but anytime they have any concerns, call to us, ticket to us, we will get them, take care of them, supported.
Mr. Wobser.
Chris, I would tell you that as I've gone around town and passed your crews, I think they're doing a really good job. But tough work, not easy, and they're doing it through some not great weather. But all in all, I think they've really done a decent job. Honestly, if you just put MetroNet on your trucks, and people would know, because I've just had a lot of questions: is what is that? What's going on? What's being put in? And would answer a lot of questions pretty quickly. Just a thought.
Yeah, we do provide contract. It'll say contractor for MetroNet on their trucks. We try to make sure that they all have them as
Right.
well. But I do appreciate it. Luckily, we've had a very mild winter for Ohio, so we were able
Yeah.
to stay pretty productive from the time we started in November. So
I'm a little disappointed that yellow is not in my part where I live.
Mr. Russell.
And I just, quick statement that I've had two citizens reach out with concerns, and I contacted MetroNet and specifically reached out to Ben, and Ben took care of both of the folks in a timely manner. I do appreciate the responsiveness, and when citizens' complaints get or concerns get taken care of in one phone call, that's always appreciated. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that, but I will tell you, the guy next to me does a lot of the work on that, so.
well, if I can add, they're not customers to us yet. I'm on the construction side. We're building the infrastructure for the customers. So if we don't appease them now and do what we're supposed to be doing on their property, we're not going to have a customer. So that's our mindset when we go in.
Ms. Warnicki.
I just have a quick question. Maps were never my strong suit, but this yellow, blue, and purple all looks like it's kind of outside the populated area of Findlay. When's the area where the people live going to get done?
The yellow areas, those are actually heavily populated underground
yeah,
home
they're-
divisions.
So the green area, though?
Anything in the green is not constructed yet or started construction yet. So those will be, the whole city will be serviced by the time we're finished.
After the third phase, then?
Yeah, this will be going on for another about 2 years. We have a lot of aerial construction that will come in, but we're working with the pole owners. That takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months. So the time we started submitting for poles, which is about a month ago, we won't probably see approvals to get on their poles for another till maybe this fall. And then once that happens, our plan will change a little bit depending on what poles we get approved for.
Mr. Russell.
I do have one question on the document. On the first page, you say we would be a certified gigabyte city. What does that mean?
Good question. So once we get to a point in which we cover the majority of homes and businesses as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, then we can announce a city as a gigabit certified city. And we'll actually come out and I'll give you guys an award for that and do a little presentation if you'll have me. So,
Is there any chance that Councilwoman Beth Warnicki, will be able to take a bottle of champagne and crack it over a MetroNet truck?
I mean, I have no problem with that.
I could get behind that.
Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, real quick, following up on Councilman Warnicki's question about the area that isn't colored in yet, and you indicated that would be like phase 4 or phase 5, whatever. What's the timing of that? What's the year? Is that 2024, 2025, 2026? How can we gauge
I think
that?
our last area of completion will be in mid 2026, if not a little sooner.
Okay.
So it'll span out. We have I want to say it's production goals to turn over so many customers every quarter, and right now we're in a quarter that we're going to actually have some customers, which is the yellow marked area. So we're going to continue construction for the next almost 2 years. So they'll just kind of fall in place.
Okay. And if I can
Yep,
follow
go
up.
ahead.
One other quick thing, just for clarification purposes. You indicated that the expansion of this, you would be utilizing other poles from other utility companies. Will you be constructing your own poles?
As of right now, we don't have any we don't have any need for our own poles. For one thing, that's an infrastructure that we'd have to maintain throughout its life cycle, where we try to use, there are already infrastructure out there, and it's a rental to us. So if there's availability, we work with the pole owners to use.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, gentlemen. I'd invite you back maybe in a few more months to give us another update. I think the citizens would appreciate that, so.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, our third is Tom Ross. Tom would like to talk about rental inspections.
Tom, is that on? Is a red light on?
No, it's not.
We knew you were louder than that.
Maybe I should turn it off. Okay. I'm sorry. I lost my place. Oh, thanks, John. All right. Sorry about that. All right. I'm here this evening to dispute the untrue statements purported by Mayor Murden and libelously printed in the Findlay Courier, Saturday edition, April 29th, 2023, where the mayor clearly stated that landlords are not subject to inspections or accountability. Following factual information you will see is in direct dispute of those false statements. Of course, this is only about a third of the laws and rules that we're subject to due to time constraints. Just like to point out that every single law or rule I'm going to read, nearly every one has an inspector associated with it and legislation funded either by federal, state, or local government. As you're going to see, the rental industry is as heavily regulated as any industry in the state of Ohio. Here we go. Ohio Revised Chapter 5321, Landlord Tenant Laws and Responsibilities. Fair Housing Act, Ohio Residential Building Code, OAC 4101. Ohio Department of Health and Residential Structures Code Requirements. National Fire Protection Administration 101. Ohio National Electric Code, ORC 4101. Hancock County Public Health Department Rules and Laws. Ohio Landlord Drug and Eviction Requirements, Ohio Revised Code 5321. Ohio Domestic Violence Law for Landlords and Tenant Responsibilities, ORC 5321 and 3113. EPA Lead-Based Paint Rules, Regulations for Inspection and Disposal, OAC 3701. Toxic Substance Control Acts, 40 CFR Part 760 for asbestos handling and removal. Resource Conservation Recovery Act, handling and disposal of solid and hazardous waste, 40 CFR Part 268. OSHA 29 1926 construction standards. HUD and Metro tenant housing inspections. Wood County Commercial and HUD Associated Building Code inspections. The Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, since I can only get through half, the City of Findlay Zoning and NEAT Office program, which has an inspector and a police officer on board. Cost to the taxpayer about $137 a year. So in addition to that, in this article, there was this poster child that everyone keeps talking about, this alleged tenant victim, Miss Deirdre Cole. Isn't quite the benevolent saint that Mayor Murren and the Courier would have us believe her to be. In fact, Miss Cole has 30-plus police calls to her former residence on College Street in less than 3 years. Calls ranging from drug activity, property damage, stolen vehicles, domestic violence, animal complaints. It goes on and on and on. Quite frankly, she has more police calls in 3 years than I have on all my properties combined in 10 years, which is a lot of property. Quite frankly, I would have evicted her at the first call. I would not have been as patient as Auditor Stashak was with her. I'm going to submit this police report to the record. John, I'll give it to you in a second. So it's clear from the article in the Courier that Mayor Murren has sort of libeled or slandered a $450 million industry, an industry that humbly serves this community and provides an invaluable service to thousands of tenants each year. It's pretty clear that that article was written to try to influence public opinion in a negative way, and perhaps it's simply either that or maybe Mrs. Murren just doesn't care about our industry, because quite frankly, anybody with an internet connection or a library card could have found out everything I just read you in 5 minutes or less. Truth and facts do apparently not fit the narrative that seems to be being pushed by the administration, which is landlords bad, government good. Sorry, folks, but that dog won't hunt anymore. So in closing, and on behalf of the Apartment Association, and quite frankly all law-abiding property owners and investors in Findlay, I have to ask you to cease and desist all such libelous and slanderous activities, Mrs. Mayor. Thank you. Questions?
Questions or comments for Mr. Ross? Thank you, Tom.
Nobody ever has questions anymore.
Okay. All right. That concludes our oral communications. There are no written communications this evening. There is I take that back, reports of municipal officers and departments.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for April 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Municipal Court Activities Report for April 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Police Department Activities Report for April 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Planning Commission minutes of April 13th, 2023, as well as a staff report of May 11th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Mr. Wobser.
You did include the staff report. Was that in discussion, staff report? And just a quick question on this. This is, this was the meeting where the committee looked at the new Get and Go and Raising Cane's out on Tiffin. Not that it's not wonderful that we're getting a Raising Cane's, one of my favorite places to go eat, but my question on this is, are we taking into consideration the amount of traffic this is going to generate in that area where we just added in a Chick-fil-A and Turkey Hill, I believe it was, gas station, Mayor or Jeremy, whoever?
I'll start with it.
How about Jeremy? Jeremy?
Well, I'll start and then I'll
Go
hand
ahead.
it over to
All
the
right.
expert since
Thank
I'm on planning commission. Yes, so we, Jeremy and the team did a great job, and actually the two separate applicants, we worked to merge kind of their site plans together to try to make it more cohesive, to provide additional space for traffic movement within both of their properties. We do recognize that especially early on, we'll probably need some additional traffic management, as we did with Chick-fil-A and have a number of other high demand restaurants. But we definitely have looked at that. We did also complete a traffic study and did some alignment things to maximize the on facility traffic movement. So that was definitely a topic of discussion, as well as a big preparation point to try to make sure we were best utilizing that. Jeremy, I don't know if you have other things you want to add.
Yeah, no, that, I mean, excuse me, what the mayor said was pretty correct. I mean, when we looked at that as a traffic study, we didn't want to see one from Cane's and one from Get Go. We had them do one big combined traffic study for that. So they looked at all their traffic counts throughout there. They did bring up some minor adjustments that we can do with the signal timing that they've seen with the level of service that we are going to take into consideration with that. So that was kind of a positive side with that. But that drive coming out is a right in, right out. We've been working with them to make sure that it can only be a right in, right out. We don't want to be wide enough where, someone, when there's no traffic, can make that left-hand turn. But kind of like what the mayor was saying, we've worked with them over a couple of different reviews of their site on, okay, where's your traffic going to stack? If it does stack up, how's that going to affect Tiffin Avenue? And all that kind of stuff. So they have changed around compared to what you would see in, their other sites on how their drive-through is going to be going through. They've actually kind of changed around from those sites because we had concerns with that as well. It's kind of hard to show without the site map and stuff on that, but we did take in consideration for both sites as one.
Mr. Wobser.
Jeremy, thank you for that explanation. Have we allowed them additional curb cuts versus what's already there for the mall, if you will?
Yeah, so on Tiffin Avenue, well, it would not be, it's the Get Go site has a right in, right out for that. That does then connect over to Cane's, but it's on the Get Go site.
So the Get Go is on the corner.
Correct.
Cane's is a little bit further west.
Correct.
The next property west.
Yep.
And you're giving them a right in, right out of Get Go?
Out of the Get Go area.
And is that going to be connected then to Raising Cane's so that
It will
people
be
coming out of there?
Yep, up to the north just a little bit. I mean, not far, maybe a parking stall up, but it's mainly, it will be on the Get Go site. So.
And what about on, was that
Croy?
Croy?
Yeah.
Additional curb cut there also?
On Croy, there's additional curb cut.
And you're
on
going to
there.
leave the one that's already there, that's what, a block and a half down?
At the north side. Yeah, on the north side there will be on that, but
There'll be two?
there'll be two curb cuts on that. It's lined up directly with the Fifth Third one, or Fifth Third, or not Fifth Third, Key Bank, sorry.
Right.
Key Bank drive lined up across there, and that's something with the signal timing.
Yeah.
What that is, because even if we add in additional stacking, all you're doing is creating more queuing. You're not going to get the vehicles through. You're still going to get the same amount through there. So it's really a timing, timing mechanism that we need to look at, and they did give consideration. So that's something we are going to seriously look in to try to improve that intersection.
Will there be access out the backside of the Get and Go or Raising Cane's so that you could access the mall lot and the additional exit, which would be another half a block down?
Yeah, so they have a curb, they or not curb cut. They both have entrances into the mall parking lot area. Thank you.
Mayor?
Just one little tidbit, and I'm not going to have the specific numbers, but you can, it'll be in your report next month. The representatives from Raising Cane's shared with us that they actually have a system where they monitor the traffic coming onto their lot, and when you come onto the lot is when they drop the chicken, so that the average time of you actually going through the line is, was it, Jeremy, like 2 minutes? So they're really moving people through there pretty quick. So just interesting.
Questions or comments? Ms. Frischi?
I'll just note that there's been a lot of conversation on that since it hit the paper. Everybody loves Raising Cane's, and everybody likes the idea of Giant Eagle, so the gas idea hopefully might be something. But there also is the concern of, you know, is Findlay a gas station on every corner and a bar on every corner, or, you know, and I feel like when people ask me, well, you guys are trying to control how many Dollar Generals are going to be allowed in town or on a distance, same thing with billboards. I don't know. I think we're getting pretty packed and pretty busy on Tiffin Avenue, so I'll just put that out there.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Hellman?
If I can, I guess I was disappointed when I saw that we're allowing additional curb cuts on Tiffin Avenue. And I've talked to some proprietors along there who have actually gone out of business because the traffic was so heavy on Tiffin Avenue and too many accidents, and they just said they wouldn't tolerate it. And I guess to follow up, I was just out in Arizona in a community called Litchfield Park, which is on the west side of Phoenix, and the planning that they do out there, to me, is excellent. And I would encourage, I guess, our planning department to take a look at how they're able to control that, but there are intersections there on the corner where there are no curb cuts. You go down the street on both sides and to get into a shopping area, and there's a McDonald's, there's, you know, Starbucks and all sorts of different little restaurants back in there, as well as a major grocery store and other ancillary retail establishments. But it's not like we do here where every place has its own individual curb cut. And I just thought maybe there's a way we could learn something as to how they are able to control the traffic there.
Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah.
So, very point well taken. You know, obviously we if you know guys have recommendations on how we both allow free development while also developing in an intelligent fashion, always game to discuss any ideas you may have related to the layouts and developments. We are talking about a more robust access management plan. You know, one of the struggles is building out already developed lots and the sharing of access points. So when we've been looking at this site, the access points that you see now, though there's no specific plans for further development at the mall at this time, we are keeping that in mind, how we may be able to reconfigure that as an entire block. And so with some of the shifting of the inner access points that has been considered, and we hope that as hopefully in the future development occurs there, we'll be able to make some adjustments to help that flow further. So we're trying to work within the parameters we have while also making things more intelligent slowly but surely.
Mr. Wilson?
I would just add one more suggestion while we're doing suggestion night. Let's bury the utility lines while we're out there doing this. It's rather unsightly out there.
Go ahead.
So we have had some discussions, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, probably months ago at this point, with AEP to discuss what underground burying looks like. Obviously, it's very costly, and that's the biggest barrier. But we are trying to get more creative, and we may further be discussing how we can, in new development areas, make sure it's buried. But that is something we're very much aware of, and I know Jeremy and I have been talking to ODOT about how we improve that corridor and how some of the policies we're changing will help clean up the sight lines. But certainly, adding greenery and burying lines would go a long way through a couple of our concrete jungle corridors.
Any other questions, comments, or suggestions? And Mr. Hellman?
If I can amend my comments earlier, to throw in the compliment about Litchfield Park, Arizona, there are no overhead lines. How they accomplished it, I don't know, but it is a nice community, so thank you.
Okay, next.
A letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation Division grant for the precision approach path indicators and runway end identifier lights.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding water pollution control clarifier rehab and oxidation ditch repairs project number 356-01300.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Findlay Fire Department activities report for April 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Traffic Commission minutes for April 17th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding an appointment to Airport Advisory Board. This appointment does not require council confirmation.
Questions or comments? Mr. Palmer.
Mayor, can you give us a brief background on Mr. Kaler?
Mr. Kaler has been a tenant out at the airport for quite a while, local businessman, great tenant. He has served on the Airport Advisory Board for many years and has been able to help provide insight on how we can continue to develop it to attract more businesses. So, local businessman, great asset to the group and able to just kind of bring that owner, which is a requirement, insight.
He's the senior member on that advisory board. He's been there quite a while, so I was on that at one time. Okay, next.
Letter
I'm sorry, other questions or comments? Okay. Appointment to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding appointment to Hancock Regional Planning Commission for Jody O'Brien, Judy Scrimshaw, Christy Ranzow, and Matthew Letty for their term to expire December 31st, 2024. These appointments do require council's confirmation.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the four be confirmed.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the four being assigned as requested, say aye. Any opposed, nay? They are appointed.
Summary financial reports for April 30th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding key performance indicators.
Questions or comments? Mr. Russell.
Yeah, Mayor, just any overview comments or items that you want to specifically point out in the KPIs?
Thank you, President Harrington. So yes, as you can see, a lot of great work, and maybe you guys read the newspaper today, I think it was today, that had a good article that hit on a couple of highlights. I know the team has been working to really decrease our unaccounted for water. That's water that maybe was lost via flushing or bad meters or inaccurate information, and so we've really been working to clean that up, or leaks in the system, so that's been great. Our violent crime as well as nonviolent crime has been decreasing, which is great. Our police and fire continue to, respond in a very timely fashion. You'll note with engineering, I just want to note that since it is yellow, that's because the first quarter you don't get a whole lot of street work done because it's cold and not great conditions. So that number will start going up pretty quick. With overtime, as you look through the detail, that was because of sickness and staffing. We're continuing to see the same issues everybody else, where we're trying to get staff, especially in police and fire. Fire was the primary component with that. It's just been timing and bringing some of our new recruits on. So that should dwindle off through the rest of this year. But otherwise, the departments are doing a great job continuing to manage that. I would encourage you to read the full report because it digs into each of the department's key indicators. And if you have questions, to please reach out. As I always tell the department heads as well, if there are other indicators that you believe would be beneficial for us to report out to you, please let us know. We want this information to be beneficial. So we're continually evaluating what makes sense to report on. We don't want them just to be something that's check mark, but also providing us insight into our operations.
Other questions or comments? Report. Oh, Ms. Frishy.
Can I go back when I meant to ask a question on the auditor's report? Can I go back?
Sure.
Really quick?
If everybody agree to that, I do. All right, no problem. Go ahead.
On the auditor's report, I just wanted to follow back up from the last council meeting when we were talking about the salt building or the salt structure that we're putting in. And I had asked about maybe using ARPA funds. And you had told me, Mayor, that our ARPA funds were all spent, but I had seen this before and I forgot to go back to it. In our last page of the document, it says we have 1.2 million sitting there that's unappropriated or spent. So what are we doing with those dollars, or what's the plan?
Yeah, so we have a game plan for all of those. So if you go back through your capital book, we have the plan. We just haven't necessarily appropriated to each of the individual projects as we kind of go through the year.
But we've appropriated some, like vehicles and
Right,
things
some
like
of them
that
have been
in here.
appropriated, we just haven't made the formal appropriation request, so we have a game plan, but not necessarily moved the money yet.
So it could change. Okay.
Okay, back to the KPI, or is there any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Add-on letter from Mayor Mern regarding Phase 2 benching properties environmental.
Mr. Russell.
Move that the letter be read into the record.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of having the letter read, say aye. Any opposed, nay. Please read the letter.
In follow-up to the question related to environmental concerns on the Phase 2 benching properties, I am providing the below summary of information. I have been in conversations with Steve Wilson, project manager for the Hancock County Commissioners, on the Phase 2 benching project. In preparation for the Phase 2 benching project, the Hancock County Commissioners have been working with Stantec Engineering. Additionally, Manick and Smith completed archaeologic services and American Structure Point completed environmental studies. Environmental phase 1s were completed on properties as deemed necessary for concern of environmental contamination, and I have received and reviewed the documents. A number of residential properties within the project area were determined to not need environmental studies completed because of no reasonable expectation of contamination based upon historical information. The only property deemed to need specific environmental remediation is that of Rainick property. The Hancock County Commissioners applied for and received a brownfield remediation grant through the Ohio Department of Development in 2022, and the environmental remediation will begin in the coming weeks. This property is already in our ownership, and we have been coordinating the remediation and mitigation efforts on this property. The consultants did not identify any other properties that needed further remediation. Additionally, I am comfortable with assuming ownership of these properties, knowing that through the Phase 2 benching project, the Hancock County Commissioners will be overseeing any spot issues that may arise as part of the project. Based upon my review of the information, discussions with Steve Wilson and various consultants, I am confident that there is extremely limited, if not no risk, to the city of Findlay related to environmental issues in assuming ownership of these properties.
Questions or comments? Mr. Stashek.
Yeah, I brought up, I think at the last meeting, concerns, and I wanted to make sure we got accurate and complete information on this, and I'm very concerned at how this has been presented to this body prior to voting on a piece of legislation. I've said before, and I guess the better way to explain it is, when you talk to an attorney that understands the statutory structure of cities, they would describe Findlay as a weak mayor structure. What they mean by that is, it is council's responsibility to make sure they have all full, complete, documented information prior to making a decision that would affect the funding or the operations of the city long term. And by that, in looking at this letter, I am very, very concerned that, number one, we don't have the individual documents tied to the information. The information was not provided to my office as the individual and the elected official that requested it, that we're talking about a significant number of properties. And what concerns me even more is that we now have a letter in the record that has the mayor saying that based upon her review of the information, she doesn't feel the city has any environmental risk, little or none. As a person who comes from the world that has dealt with real estate, and as your fiscal officer, whose job is to understand the liability of the city, it is the consultant's job. It is an environmental consultant's job to make sure the information is presented to the city of Findlay in a manner, and to this body, I believe, in a manner so that you can make an informed, complete evaluation of what you're looking at. So I am for the benching project. I am excited that we're getting closer. But what I am not for is that we continue to have major decisions brought to the body, this body, city council, where the information that you're given to evaluate is incomplete. And I'll summarize it this way. And I could use any one of you as an example. Would you personally, if the county was going to deed these properties, would you personally allow those deeds to come to you, your individual, putting your finances at risk, with the guarantee that the city will buy those properties from you 24 hours later, but you maintain the environmental liability based on the information you have today? If you would do that, if you would take on that personal liability, that environmental responsibility, with a guarantee the city would buy those properties back 24 hours later, then go ahead and vote for this. But prudence and common sense says you deserve to see the information, you deserve to see it in a business-like fashion, and you deserve to see it organized in a manner that shows you a complete review has been done. And I have not seen that, and if you have seen that, I'm disappointed that my office hasn't. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Mr. Baumann.
I guess with due respect, that's not how I read the letter, or the letter sounded to me. It sounded like the commissioners were on the hook should additional environmental concerns be raised, not the city. Correct, Ms. Mayor?
So as part of this benching project, a couple of things. So let's take a step back. The area that we're looking at is about 71 parcels. The majority of these at various points have been residential. We have documentation. I've received it late last week from the project manager, Steve Wilson. We were able to remove it from disks of all the reports, because each of the environmental reports, if you've seen one, is 300 pages long with all the archaeological information and the history of it and their findings and the recommendations and summaries, etc. Happy to provide that to everybody. A number of the properties were said these have always been residential. There's no reason that we believe that there's a contamination. You're good. The next ones, they said, okay, here are all the commercial properties. We've done a variety of remediation. So one thing that I failed to mention, and I apologize, is that a number of underground storage tanks have already been removed. We as a community have been watching this happen for the last 7, 8, 10 years as the county or the city has acquired these properties, has done various remediations, has torn down properties and taken steps to make sure it was safe to be maintained there. So we have each of those reports. Then the commissioners are saying, okay, and now we are taking on the responsibility, continuing to oversee the liability of completing the benching project, which is further going to remediate anything that's in the area. We have the Rainick property that we said, okay, there's an environmental liability. We're going to excavate that separately and take it to the landfill. Now the commissioners are going to come in and do the whole area where, Jeremy, 8, 10, 15 feet in various spots is being excavated out and taken care of. So if they find a pile of old tires in a random spot, that's going to be removed as part of the project. So this in here, instead of going through parcel by parcel, line by line, and trying to draw out from each of those different reports which report references it and at what date and time the blessing was given that it was safe to own and be turned into a park area, is I provided a summary because I knew that this was important to get to you guys and that there was a little bit of delay in getting all of the formal documentation. So I apologize that that is the case, but I personally feel comfortable with taking on the liability if that is what needed to be done, because this has been a well-managed project for a decade. Appropriate steps have been taken to make sure it's not a hazard to our community. We're not taking on an extensive liability. Remediation work has already been planned and is already funded, and I'm comfortable that there is not a risk with us moving forward with this.
Mr. Slough.
Jeremy, give us your 2 cents.
I have not reviewed all the documents, so I don't want to say one way or another, but speaking with looking at what the phase 1 benching was, because we know that was an environmental, there was problems with that throughout there. There were areas that they had to undercut extensively because they kept finding more and more environmental problems with that. All that was handled off site. To the proper locations within it. All those areas, they do identify those before they even say something's a good dirt. They have to have so many tests prior to. So looking at how phase 1 was treated and how phase 2 is kind of in the same manner, I believe that, looking at those environmental sections, if they do find it where it's going deeper than the 10 foot, let's say, that they will have to continue down because that is kind of guidelines they have to go with that.
Mr. Stashek.
Thank you. I think I appreciate all those points, and I appreciate the work that's been done. I appreciate what looks like cooperation with the commissioners. I think that's wonderful. So what I'm saying is not to belittle any of those efforts. What I am saying is, I think the three of you make my point wonderfully. I think saying I read from the letter and I believe based on the letter, to say I have the information but I haven't provided it, I provide a summary. To say I haven't reviewed all the information, I'm saying to this body, you are the ones responsible. You are the ones to make the decision, and ultimately, document, document, document. Get the documents, make sure there's a record of the documents in the council record, not the administrative record. Make sure that you have the letters saying that the commissioners are taking on the liability and will handle any environmental issues there. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure the information is complete, and you have all questions answered as individual members representing your entire community before we take on a potential liability that may or may not be there. And again, I appreciate and respect what the mayor is saying in terms of her belief. But my point is different than that. My point is this body, it's time this body takes some responsibility, particularly in this type of issue, and we should not be risking taking on liability. The answer is simple. The answer is table it, have a committee of the whole, get the information. The people who want to learn it, learn it. The people who don't. And as you move forward, do it with the documents in place. But right now, you don't even know if you have all the documents in place. You don't even know if you've asked all the questions. And a couple of you are pretty well versed in real estate and environmental or development. So a lot of you have some knowledge there. Use that knowledge, protect yourselves, protect the community. That's my advice to you as your fiscal officer. And thank you for giving me the floor.
Other
Mr.
questions
President.
or comments? Ms. Frischie.
Don, I don't know that Jeremy's question was answered by the mayor of who's liable on it. And I guess my question to you as the law director, what is our normal process when we're looking at taking on a piece of property that has an environmental issue? What do we get provided to us on each parcel that says it's clean, that says it's safe without being a 300-page document? Don't we have a cover, a basic document? Because his question was about liability, saying it's the counties. I didn't hear that you said yes, it was, or only until we take possession and then we have to finish doing it. So I guess I'm looking for the law director to tell me what normally we receive when we're going to take, like we recently had our past councilman's property over there east of Main Street on the park. I can't think of
It's the Rainick property, which is
Rainick.
referenced
Yep,
in the document.
So that was obviously a huge EPA issue and we took it on. What did we get provided to us before we took it? What was presented to council? What's the standard documents that are given to us?
You generally get a closure report for the project. So when it's clean, you get the report from the state or county, and that's what you rely on. And that's the document you would want to keep.
Do we have that?
Hang on, Mayor?
So I guess I would address that a little bit differently. When we're looking at properties, you complete a phase 1 environmental study, and then if it warrants it, you would complete a phase 2. On the majority of these properties, that's what we have, those documents I received, those 300. And they do sometimes, they'll give you an executive summary that's 20 pages long. In this case, they gave us the entire document. So you get the summary inside the document. This is the same situation. So this is the same situation we had with phase 1. Those properties, instead of being transferred from an owner to the county, to the city, they went from the owner to the city so that we didn't have to record them multiple times. And the county, as the entity overseeing and that received the flood money, is completing the projects. Here in the same situation, the city at this point in time, you know, the property you just brought up, the Rainick property or the Nichols Plating Company property, is already in the city's name. And as part of the project, the county is the entity that did the remediation and is doing the environmental. So we do have the documents related to it. When you then do remediation, the environmental entity that completes the work will provide you a statement of the work being complete that would be filed, for example, with Buster, Bureau of Underground Storage Tanks. These previous, I can never say it right, the Howerman property and the Kuhlman shop, those both had underground tanks that were removed and then filed with Buster that they had been removed.
So we're just not there yet. You don't have all ducks in a row yet.
No, we have all of those documents on file.
Because you said most properties, okay.
Well, the residential properties, environmental studies were not completed because the environmental entities reviewed and said, we don't need to do a phase 1 because there's no reasonable expectation of contamination. So we're not going to do a study for the sake of doing a study.
Okay.
Yep.
I just need to excuse myself from the rest of the meeting. I have to be somewhere, so
Okay.
I apologize.
All right. Mr. Stashak.
My last comment I want to share with the group, and I don't know if there's been conversations at your level or at the mayor's level, but it's been intimated to me by one of your county commissioners that they may not even have enough funds to finish some of the flood mitigation items that are in place that they were expected to pay for due to supply chain and some of the cost increases. That may be true, that may not be true. It was just a comment in a casual setting, but I took it seriously. So in looking at this again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do your due diligence, move forward. I haven't heard that anything is at risk from putting a little delay on accepting these properties, but document, get those questions answered, and go from there. I hate to see us make a mistake, and I don't think we will, but let's make sure we don't.
Committee reports.
The Strategic Planning Committee met on May 3rd, 2023 to continue the strategic planning process. We recommend that the goals and objective of the plan be distributed to the committee and forwarded to Planning Next so they can start their finalization process. The Strategic Planning Committee will have a final vote for approval of the goals and objectives.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve the committee report.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the committee report say aye. Any opposed, nay? The committee report is adopted. Legislation, we will start with resolutions.
Third reading for Resolution 12, 2023. A resolution stating what services the City of Findlay, Ohio will provide to the territory proposed to be annexed to the City of Findlay, Ohio, situated in Marion and Cass Townships, County of Hancock, State of Ohio, being a part of the south half of Section 33 and part of the southwest quarter of Section 34, Township 2 North, Range 11 East, Cass Township, also being part of the northwest quarter, part of the northeast quarter, and part of the southeast quarter of Section 4, Marion Township, Township 1 North, Range 11 East, also being part of the northwest quarter and part of the southwest quarter of Section 3, Marion Township, Township 1 North, Range 11 East, County of Hancock, State of Ohio, a tract of land consisting of 15.043 acres of land, more or less.
Mr. Slough?
Could you repeat that, please?
Better not be a second to that.
I would move for adoption of the resolution.
Dies for lack of a second. I'm sorry, say again, Mr.
I would move for adoption of the resolution.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Aye. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-41. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Maumee Watershed Conservancy District and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for continued flood mitigation improvements in and near the city of Findlay and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of ordinance 2023-041.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-42, and ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Slough.
I have moved for adoption of ordinance 2023-042.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-43, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to accept permanent ownership of properties in order for the Board of Commissioners of Hancock County, Ohio to transfer the parcels listed on the attached exhibit to the city of Findlay, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Wobser.
I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of tabling the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Nay.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Nay.
3 nay.
The
6.
ordinance is tabled.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-46, an ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 315 North Blanchard Street rezone, which previously was zoned R3 small lot residential to C1 local commercial. Second reading for ordinance 2023-47, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enroll the city of Findlay in the Bureau of Workers' Compensation Group Retrospective Rating Plan and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023-48, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contract or contracts for the purchase of a replacement vehicle for the city of Findlay Parking Enforcement Department, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023
Oh, Mr. Russell.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. Okay.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-49, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contract or contracts for the Harrison Street waterline replacement, project number 35720-200, appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Now, Mr. Russell.
So that the folks in the West Park area around the Harrison Street, this water line replacement, which will create a looped water line in the area and provide so that they can enjoy the benefits of this project 2 weeks earlier than waiting for its third reading. I motion that this ordinance be given this council statutory rules be suspended and this ordinance get its third reading.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its third reading.
Ordinance 2023-49.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer. And Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-50, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contract or contracts with Hone Brick Excavating Incorporated for the County Road 212, County Road 236, road widening project number 32864600, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2023-55, An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to apply for grant funds and enter into an agreement and/or related documents with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the replacement of the precision approach path indicators and runway end identifier lights at the city of Findlay Airport and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Baumann.
Jeremy, this is just to allow your folks to apply for the grant, correct? There's no dollar amount.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is to apply for the grant and then to accept the grant, but we'll still have to come back to council if we're awarded the grant to appropriate the funds into the project. But this will allow us to apply for it up to the amounts. It is a 5% local match with it. But this will allow us to apply, accept, and then I will have to come back to council to appropriate the funds in.
Mr. Baumann.
In that case, I move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance number 2023-055 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
And Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2023-55. Ordinance 2023-55.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, everybody. Mr. Hellman, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye after your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer? Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2023-56. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to enter into a contractor contracts for repairs on oxidation ditches at the city of Findlay Water Pollution Control Center, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Lauren from the Blanchard River Watershed Partnership was scheduled to speak under oral communication. I assume you did not know we start at 6 o'clock because you came in at 7 o'clock. And with council's permission, I'd like to give her 4 minutes to give us an update. Is that okay? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Lauren, come on up and let us know what's going on.
Did I miss something?
I'm sorry I embarrassed you, but you need to either get on Eastern Daylight Savings Time
Yeah.
or we start at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. That will be noted for future meetings. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Lauren Sandu. I'm the watershed coordinator for the Blanchard River Watershed Partnership. I just wanted to provide a quick update on the Riverside Dam project. We had a meeting with Verdantis, the engineering firm that's working on the project, on April 23rd, or Wednesday, April 26th, and they wanted to just give a formal overview of everything that had been accomplished with the engineering study of the Riverside Dam and Reservoir area, which is now complete. John Hull and Kristen Jenkins of Verdantis led that meeting in the City Council chambers on Wednesday, April 26th at 11 o'clock. Engineers from Alden Fish Passage, or the Fish Passage engineers from the Alden engineering firm were also present virtually at that meeting. Several BRWP board members were there as well. A lot of the information that was provided in that meeting had previously been presented at the outreach event that we had at Riverside Dam Park back in September of 2022. There were a couple of new pieces of information, though, that I did want to present. So overall in the meeting, an overview of the Riverside Dam project was provided, as well as each of the tasks that were completed during the engineering study. They discussed sediment sampling results, the bathymetric survey, the cultural resources review, and discussed the fish and mussel species overview, stating that there was a marked difference in species found upstream and downstream of the dam. Just emphasizing the importance of the and necessity of the fish passage to be incorporated into the dam. And funding sources and next steps were also discussed. So some of the key findings of the sediment study was that none of the sediment that was dredged or that will be dredged from around the dam were found to contain any concerning levels of any pollutants, chemicals, or heavy metals, and can be therefore used in beneficial use programs. One of the programs that they mentioned was, that Verdantis mentioned, was the Ohio Voluntary Action Program, which involves the use of dredged sediments at brownfield sites. So any sediment that is dredged from behind the dam and in the reservoir area could potentially qualify for that use. And the reason why that was discussed, because there's concern about the cost in terms of hauling sediment away from the project site. And there, under this Ohio Voluntary Action Program, there's a chance that any brownfield operations, if that is the route that's taken, could potentially pay for sediment that's transported off of out of Riverside Park. So that is an option, and it's good to know that the sediment isn't contaminated, so it can be used elsewhere. It was recommended that any of the dredged sediment after construction occurs not be used for structural fill. So Verdantis didn't feel that sediment would be good for those types of projects. There were 3 fish passage designs that were discussed by the engineers at Alden, who will be designing the fish passage. And during this meeting, it was decided that options 1 and 3 were preferred, since option 2 involved partial removal of the dam, which we are not interested in. So options 1 and 3, and I have handouts to show what those look like. They involve a bypass that goes around the dam. So if you're standing at Riverside Park down where everybody feeds the ducks, the bypass would be opposite that, so that it's not easily accessible by the public. Sediment mitigation will be factored into the fish passage design to prevent future buildup of sediment behind the dam, so that we don't have to dredge again and revisit this project 100 years from now, 50 to 100 years from now. And safety improvements to the dam itself were also discussed, because there were deaths at the dam several years ago. So in options 1 and 3, which involve the bypass around the dam, there are safety elements that can be factored into that, and that is something that Verdantis is going to work with us on. We may have to pursue a different funding avenue to factor in those safety components, but that is something that they were willing to work with us on. We will be applying for funding through NOAA this summer. They have a second round of fish passage funding that should be announced sometime in June. We're applying for that along with Verdantis. Some questions for further discussion that came from this meeting was, what will the maintenance of the fish passage look like? And that's something that'll be discussed once the design is finalized. And how will the East Main Cross Street overlook area, parking lot, and trail be impacted? And Verdantis did state that some alterations would occur in that area along East Main Cross Street. But again, the extensions of those alterations will be better known once the fish passage design is finalized. So nothing really all that new. They just kind of wanted to formally present the findings of the engineering study.
Mr. Russell.
So the NOAA grant, is that the one we applied for last year? And
Yes. So we had applied for that back in August. We did not receive that funding. They were overwhelmed with projects, and a lot of the projects that were selected were along the West Coast. So now those projects are out of the way, and we did meet with our local NOAA representative, and they said that this project scored high and that they encouraged us to reapply for the second round of funding.
Mr. Wobser.
Lauren, first off, thanks for that. It's always very interesting. The disposition of the sediment, is that something that the city will need to make a decision on, or where would that decision-making process
It would
lie?
probably be the city, just wherever they feel that the sediment could best be used, or if somebody expresses interest in it, for any construction projects or anything like that. There was also talk of potentially using it on agricultural fields, since it is nutrient rich, and there have been research projects out of Bowling Green that are looking at that currently, and it's shown some promising effects on corn. So if there's agricultural fields around the Riverside Park area, that could also be an option if those landowners were interested.
Well, that's certainly where it all came from in the first place.
Right.
So that's an interesting point. And then have they thought about, have got to the point yet when they start to dredge that out, there's going to have to be a place where it's drained
Yes.
and allowed to dry it out. Do we know where that's going to happen?
Not as of yet, but I'm knowing Verdantis and how many projects like this they've done in the past, they'll
Sure.
have all of that under control.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see how that all comes together, and I guess that'll be a good discussion for this group to figure out what to do with that, if there's maybe potential value in it. I mean, the brownfield thing's very nice, and if they're going to pay for the trucking of it, that may be our best financial option, but it's certainly something for us to look at.
Yeah.
Mr. Hellman?
Lauren, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Later, otherwise, we're not going to hold that
Thank
against
you.
you. Has there been a cost estimate to redo that dam and this whole project?
So the whole project right now, we're estimating it to be about 3.1 million. That's what we requested. We'll have a better estimate now that we've kind of picked the options that we want to go with for the fish passage. I'm expecting it to be 2.8, 3.1, somewhere around there.
And if
Mr.
I
Hellman?
may, is there a time frame as to how long the construction project would last? Is this a 6-month project, a year project? Or?
Yes, so the pre-construction, which would be finalizing the designs and getting all the permitting and all that, that would be about 6 to 9 months, with construction coming after that. Construction itself would be about 6 to 9 months as well. The goal is that everything would be complete by 2026 at the latest.
Mr. Greeno?
Thank you.
Yeah, Lauren, the cost that you just told us, that does not include any of the safety costs?
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. That would be an addition on top of. Okay.
Other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
And
letting me.
I invite you back in for an update later, but you want me to text you to remind you or anything like that?
No.
Just kidding.
Thank you so much.
Old business. New business. Mr. Wobser.
The reason that I made a motion to table the legislation on the properties, Mayor, simply take and the documentation that we've got for these properties on the environmental, the report from Stantec, which says in paragraph 3 here, completed archaeological services and American Structure Point completed environmental studies. If we can just have those and enter those into council's record. And I'll ask you a question along with that. My guess is that Stantec reviewed the testing and gave their approval on it. I know that you said you reviewed it, which I appreciate, but did Stantec also give their stamp of approval on those tests?
Yes, Stantec has been the engineering firm that has been managing the entire project. And so as part of their management of that project, they've brought in the necessary experts for the different varying levels of archaeological and environmental remediation.
Very good. And I think so, just to finish my comments on that, as soon as that we can enter those into our record, we'll pass this and it'll be on our way. That would be my opinion. I will pass it if it's not that done.
Not a problem. I completely understand. Again, I apologize that we didn't have that. I will, happy to make accessible. I'll certainly make sure the auditor gets a copy. I'll need a flash drive to get those all to you. But we, to synthesize it down and try to give it a version, because there are 20 plus reports of each 300 pages. So we can attach it, but I guess I'm assuming you guys don't want me to give you a binder of those at your next meeting. You would like a summary of some sort?
I would think that, can we include an electronic copy that would ultimately be added in, be made available to council, and then be added into the record, into our minutes as an add-on? Jim, would that satisfy the open records?
Well, ultimately, I think your body needs to decide what is adequate, but I think that's great if you do that. And I also think if Stantec's done that, there's got to be some type of a letter that they've issued that goes over all the projects and something, making sure the liability for the project is still on the county commissioners, that you're not going to inherit that halfway through, things like that. Just dot I's across the T's. Thank you.
Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, thank you. I guess to visit that subject again, the reason I voted not to table it is I doubt that I'm going to read all those engineering reports. I mean, that's why we have the engineering consultants that do this. Stantec, Manick & Smith, these people have managed huge projects. We've got an engineer on staff. We've got a law director. I mean, we've got a lot of experts. And for me to sit down and read that thing would be a complete waste of my time. That's why we depend on these folks. And Jim, that's why we depend on you to put together all these numbers. I mean, we look at them, we understand them a little bit, but there's a trust there based on the position that you hold. So for us to table these things, to me, doesn't make any sense. But at any rate, that's the way it is.
Mayor?
Thank you.
I will work to get both a letter from the commissioners stating that they will continue to manage the projects and assume the liability as that's completed, as well as then we will work to, most likely what we'll do is put the reports on your website as part of your agenda, and then we can move it over to attachments as minutes, just as we've done with, committee reports. We have all the, downtown recreation documents and all that jazz on there. And then we'll also have from Stantec or one of the other firms a summary letter with their stamp of expertise.
Thank you.
If I may.
Other new business.
Just a couple of quick items. First of all, I think it would be really funny if we gave you guys like Jeopardy, like clickers, and you lit up instead, because watching you raise your hands is pretty good, but to see it actually like in real time would be even better, I think. I want to give a shout out to now retired Chief Ring, as his last day was officially Saturday. So he is certainly missed, but again, great team and legacy that he has left, and we'll be working through the interview process in the coming weeks to name a new chief. Additionally, I want to give a shout out to our public works team, street department, water distribution, water utility billing departments, and they all worked together to get, in this past week, approximately 4,000 transmitters in 1 week installed. They were out working in teams and going out, so we are ready to rock and roll as we continue to get more transmitters into our inventory to get those into the ground and get that project addressed. So want to give them all a big shout out that they've really been hustling to get that done. Also want to just give a shout out. Per my knowledge, the Van Buren girls softball game in district tournament is still 0-0, so wishing them luck. And then I believe that is it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Greeno.
Yes, I'd like to schedule a water and sewer meeting on Wednesday, May the 31st at 4:30. And this will be for a review of the progress on the internal control evaluation for the city utility billing department. It'll be a review of things that have been achieved so far.
Mr. Wobser.
This is a topic I've been meaning to bring up to council for a little while now. On the monthly collection report that comes from Mary Price, our tax administrator, we have a report on there that is called the Monthly Collection Report to City Council. This report was born out of a problem that we had with income tax quite some time ago, and it has been solved quite some time ago. If you read this report has essentially been the same since, since Mary took over for sure, and I doubt it's ever going to change because, again, the problem that we are trying to define is no longer there. So this report, normally I would say income tax would take this on and get rid of it, but this report was put in because City Council asked it to be there. So I would make a motion that we remove this report, save Mary the extra 10 minutes a month that it takes her to produce this and the page of paper that it takes to print it out. I don't think it serves a purpose any further unless, Jim, unless you've got any further comments on that, I think we can get rid of this.
Mr. Stashek.
I don't see any issues with that, and I would add to that, at the quarterly income tax board meeting, certainly we just make that part of the record of the minutes and forward that so you are getting an update as a council through that, because we cover it as regular business in the income tax board.
Excellent point.
So we have a motion. Do I hear a second? Mr. Niemeyer, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of eliminating that report as described, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Just a second, Mr. Russell. You can sit here maybe next week, all right? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. It is agreed to. Other new business. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive. Mr. Russell.
Yes, I make a motion that City Council adjourn to executive session to discuss infrastructure in support of an economic development project. There will be no business of council after the executive session.
Second, Mr. Baumann. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, say aye. Any opposed? What? I'm sorry. We do need a roll call on this one. So, sorry, Mr. Russell. You should have told me that. You're good at telling me everything else. You should have told me that one. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Executive session has been approved.